I designed my own Overwatch support hero. This is her. Her name is Maestro, and she was visualized by my good friend Gwyn. You should check him out on all these socials, by the way, he does commissions. This video is going to be in 2 parts, her backstory and lore, and then her actual gameplay kit. I think her backstory makes her kit make sense, but if you're more interested in the gameplay, go to this timestamp. If not, let's officially meet Amalia Santana, aka Maestro. Amalia is from Algeciras, Spain, a major port city located right next to the Strait of Gibraltar. During its peak, the Overwatch base at Gibraltar helped boom the local economy a lot. Even though her parents worked blue-collar jobs in shipping and fishing, they made plenty to provide for their family comfortably. In her youth, Amalia showed an early interest in music. Not only did she appreciate the popular music of her time, she became enamored by orchestration. She researched every role in the orchestra and begged her parents to bring her to local symphonies whenever they could. When she was starting secondary school, her family were able to string together the money to buy her an instrument, and when she was asked what she wanted to play, she responded with all of them. She eventually settled on the violin and picked it up very quickly. Her teachers said they had never seen someone learn an instrument so fast. Throughout her childhood education, she mastered her craft, playing in many youth symphonies around the country. Part of the gift with the violin were Amalia's new biotic arms. While most people receive cybernetics out of necessity, it is still possible to get them for other reasons. Many musicians and athletes get them in order to enhance their physical prowess. Since healthcare was so good in Spain at the time, it really wasn't even too much stress on the family's finances. Of course, the arms they picked out were fairly cheap and old, but definitely got the job done. With her accelerated learning, Amalia found interest and lots of success in a variety of topics, including but not limited to science, math, and multiple sports. If you could think of it, she had tried it and was probably very good at it. All of this experience allowed her to basically choose which university she would like to go to due to her academic prowess. Yet during her time touring the country and honing her craft, her family still needed to provide for her. They had to stay and work in order to allow their daughter the luxury of her dreams. So Amalia was very often alone, looking after herself, playing the role of caretaker, student, and performer all at once. Amalia also began to feel this weight on her as her family had devoted all their resources into her education. While she had not previously let them down, the more she took on, the more that she felt something might collapse. Yet stubborn as she is, she did not want to fall behind in any of the things she started on or drop any of them at the same time. So it was no surprise that when she arrived at her university that had more resources than she could have possibly imagined, she went wild. She spent her time learning all the parts of the orchestra, and she quickly mastered all of them as well. She put particular focus on conducting, as she felt her understanding of the entire pit was an ace up her sleeve. She also spent lots of time with her professors trying to brainstorm solutions for her to be able to maximize how many roles she could handle at once. Now, these are not time management solutions. These were a little more fantastical. Her college was sponsored by Overwatch and had access to a lot of their tech. Amalia theorized that there may be a way to utilize the Chrono Accelerator's time manipulation to allow Amalia to work faster and thus increase her productivity and workload to better provide for her family. Time went on, and near the end of her college career, she was preparing for her first big conducting gig when the world was turned upside down. Overwatch had been shut down completely, which was a terrible blow to the local economy at home. Not only that, it completely halted her research, since the main sponsor of the university was backing out. All of a sudden, Amalia was now expected to be the sole breadwinner when she was at a university, and she didn't have a good way to do it yet to keep that same comfort level her family had worked so hard to provide for her. The crash of the economy really hit hard, as the jobs for many of the things that Amalia focused on in school had completely dried up. Amalia was able to get a job at the shipyard thanks to her cybernetics, of course, but it was not going to be enough to support what her family needed. Thinking of any way she could possibly continue her research, it dawned on her that the Overwatch base overlooking Gibraltar must be abandoned, and with it, there should be lots of technology similar to what she had already worked with. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, Amalia did her best to learn the ins and outs of the shipyard and was able to hijack a smaller dinghy to cross the strait. During the next couple of months, she would secretly return to the base after work and continue her research. After much trial and error, she eventually made a breakthrough, figuring out a way to accelerate herself to such speed that she could effectively be in 2 places at once. Upon returning to work with this new tech and skill set, Amalia made a very big impression. She was much more efficient, but was quickly, no pun intended, burning herself out. Yet her recognition, and more importantly her pay, never really changed. So she was working herself to the bone trying to provide for her family, but her effort was not seeing results. But Amalia did have an alternative. Her time at Gibraltar was not met without trouble. She had to navigate many groups of bandits and thieves all attempting to steal old Overwatch technology, much like herself. Luckily for her, Overwatch did not keep many conventional weapons around, and the tech that they did have would need a lot more work. She recognized its value well before any of the other groups and did not want to let this opportunity go to waste. If she could find a way to safely distribute this technology, maybe she could make some extra money on the side. So she fashioned some legs with scrapped parts from an Omnic model she had never seen before in order to maximize her speed, took full advantage of that Spanish healthcare, and began to commence her plan. She also took her old childhood violin and transformed it into a crossbow, something that she could use to fight back if any situation got hairy. Of course, she threw in a little bit of Overwatch technology in there as well. Her speed actually made her appear to be in multiple places at once, so she continually returned to the base disguising her identity and taking on groups of bandits. She was marking her territory. She was a formidable foe, and this was made known to her by the reaction she overheard. Multiple groups have referred to her little army as the Orchestra, most likely because of the many run-ins with bandits that she had that ended with her playing beautiful harmonies with her own violin crossbow to scare them off. Once bandits stopped trying to get into the base, realizing it was a fruitless endeavor, Amalia focused on using Overwatch tech to create weapons to sell to arms dealers. She took up the moniker Maestro in order to interact with these groups anonymously. This ended up being an immensely lucrative business and actually helped out her family a lot. But Amalia quickly recognized the flaw of introducing weapons to her community and used her new wealth to transport her family to France, which was meant to be a much more stable, safe area. And since Watchpoint Gibraltar was running out of resources, she began traveling around to other Overwatch bases in order to continue her reign. The Orchestra is the most revered crime syndicate in the country, but at the end of the day, it's all thanks to the Maestro. As I'm filming this, I want to make it clear that the whole idea is that Amalia is moving so fast that it looks like there are multiple people at one time. So that's where her little army of the Orchestra is supposed to be. It's actually all just her, but it appears like she is a group of bandits. So that's why when she calls herself the Maestro, it looks like she's operating an entire army, but really it's all just her. Anyways, that's her backstory. Some extra character things you should know is that she is very resentful of Overwatch and blames them all for the fall of the community. As you may have guessed as well, she values family over all, as she actively made and continues to make her community a worse place in order to provide for them. I wouldn't call her the most moral person on the planet, but to call her a bad person I think is also wrong. Her name also wasn't just randomly chosen, there was a little bit of reason to it. Amalia comes from the stem Amal, meaning work, kind of playing into her identity of trying to do everything at once, and then Santana is shared with the famous musician Carlos Santana. Alright, moving on to her gameplay, let's talk design fundamentals. I really like the idea of stance characters, a character that swaps between modes that have different strengths and weaknesses. The closest thing Overwatch has is Ram, although I find a lot of his power to be in one mode, Nemesis, and that's not what I'm going for. I want her modes to be as equal as possible, but you are giving up something from being in one or the other. I'm going to run you through her kit first, explain the nuances I see with it, and then end with a couple of potential problems I can foresee. I'm jumping in here before I start talking about the actual gameplay stuff because I feel like I might have not gotten everything across perfectly without good visualization. So at the end of the explanation, and I'll jump in to tell you when it's about to happen, I will actually give you kind of a visual idea of what you should be going for, basically a loop of gameplay that Maestro might be doing. You'll see when we get there, but I hope that it gets that idea across about her moment-to-moment gameplay. Okay, I'll see you in a couple minutes. Thank you. All right, for the gameplay section here, I'm actually going to demonstrate with Freya, who's available for the limited trial right now, because I think it'll help give me a good visual indicator, and I can also walk you through in real time what I meant. I feel like the scripted part of this video did not get a lot of my points across, and I can better explain them here. Maestro is very, very different than a lot of heroes. Maybe I've overcomplicated her just a tad. I will talk about some problems later, but this character has a very unique passive. It's going to be called Own Tempo. Basically what it means is that, kind of like Lucio, Maestro has two different modes, we'll call them songs, one for healing and one for damage. When she's in either of these modes, her abilities are changed slightly depending on which one you're in. The big kicker here is that the rate of fire and the tempo, like the rhythm of your fire, is changed between them. Keep that in mind before we go into the primary fire, because that's when it's going to really matter. But basically what you're trying to do is fire your primary fire on beat, and that way you're going to get more potent shots. Basically, this is a character that has a rhythm mechanic. Like, honestly, something from Crypta the Necrodancer I think is a really good way to kind of consider like what that's actually going to look like in game. When you shoot on beat, you do more damage or healing, and you keep your uptime up to a maximum. Every time you use an ability, it'll reload your weapon. And let's talk about your primary fire in that kind of sense, because it kind of all makes sense once the primary is in the goal. Basically, the arrow is going to be an arrow, or your primary fire is an arrow with no bullet drop off, like, you know, like a Freya thing, right? That's the best way I can show it. When you're in healing mode, it fires a pretty linear shot, reload, shot, reload. So it would, and I'm going to use the aim in as the reload to keep it on the beat that I want. So it would be like shot, load, shot, load, shot, load, okay? Keep that in mind. Remember, you're doing this manually. You can't just hold it down and it would do it automatically because of the rhythm mechanic, right? So each arrow does a moderate amount of burst healing. You know, think of it like Ana. Damage mode is where it gets a little tricky. You actually shoot in a triplet rhythm. So what does that actually mean? Well, a triplet is 3 notes equally spaced within 2 beats. Showing that off, that's actually triplet load, triplet load, triplet load. Do you see what I'm talking about? So basically, you're firing on beat, and that's like the max damage you can do, right? There's like a big DPS gap in the middle, right? So you can fire off beat. Like, let's say, and I'm going to use headshots and not headshots to show it, right? If I fire on beat, this is the max damage I can get, right? But let's say that somebody is running away or needs something. I can just kind of fire like that and do less damage, but I might actually kill them in that time, right? You know, this is a time requirement that might not actually come out to the spot that I want it to be. I think that's something to consider. Same thing with healing, although since healing is kind of like one and done, it's really more of like a loop to just keep you like shoot, load, shoot, load, shoot, load. Keep that in mind. That's the primary fire. That's how it works, okay? So secondary fire is a little complicated to explain, but I think it makes sense if you were actually to keep an actual character with this. So basically, it just has the opposite style of fire. So that if I'm in healing mode, I do have a way to do damage. It's just that it is less effective. If I'm in healing mode and I'm typically doing like shot, load, shot, load, shot, load, shot, load, then I can interrupt that cycle, do shot, load, triplet, load, shot, load, shot. You know what I'm saying here? Basically, what it does is that you have a way to interrupt your style, like your rhythm, but you're losing out on max either healing or damage potential, and there's amount of time too, right? So my damage is going to be a lot lower when I try to do that. Keep that in mind. And I have to do this really long reload. In that time, I cannot heal at all. Same thing with the other mode. You know, you're doing like shot, 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 load, shot, load. That also, to keep it on beat, you have to add an extra time. So you do get to have one like healing bullet, shot, load. You have a time commitment that is going to take out from the maximum damage you can do, right? You're doing very little, and you could continue to do that, right? If I'm in the other mode, I could still do the triplet that's less potent, or I could just do the shot, load, if I really need to. Keep that in mind, right? So basically, when you're in one mode or the other, you're not stranded. You don't like lose out on your healing potential or your damage potential. However, it is much less, and if you choose to do it, you're giving up a lot of the most potent value that you can get. So you really have to be conscious of what mode you're in at what time and when it's going to require you to do whatever thing, right? Now you may be wondering to yourself, how do I swap modes? Well, that is going to be with your first ability, front flip / backflip. All it is a flip that swaps Maestro between modes. Basically, if I'm in healing mode here, I can do my shot, load, and then front flip, and that takes up a measure, right? So basically, that puts you into damage mode. So you'd be doing like shot, load, shot, load, shot, load, shot, load, front flip, you see what I'm saying there? The other way is also the case, right? So maybe I'm in DPS mode and I go and then ba. I understand I just said like a bunch of gibberish. When you're in healing mode, you do a front flip to go aggressive with damage mode. When you're in damage mode, you do a back flip to go on the defensive with your healing mode. Okay, you can change how far you go, and I'm going to kind of visualize that with Freya, right? You can get a little bit more vertical if you kind of hold up and you don't hold back at all. So you can just do something like that. That could be your, you know, your flip, or you can just go fully forward or fully backwards, depending, and then you get a much longer version, right? So you kind of have, you get a choice, right? You don't have to go super into the fray. You don't have to go super up into the air. It's on you. You can't just do like super short ones or super long ones both ways. You kind of have to pick which way. Basically, you can't just get the full maximum range vertically or the most range horizontally in the same jump. You kind of have to choose some gradient in there of how far you're going to go. This one I think should be on a short to moderate cooldown, something like a 5 or 6 seconds, so you're not completely stuck in one of your modes. And if it's too long, then you're going to be really susceptible. But if it's too short, then like what's the point of having mode swapping and penalties for it if you could just kind of do anything at any time? Also, don't forget about the reload. It automatically reloads your weapon. So if I'm in, you know, healing mode and I do like you know, shot, reload, shot, I can just jump forward and then I can go right into the DPS. You know what I mean? So it basically takes up that measure to jump, but then you have your reload. That's if you do it on beat. Of course, make sure you keep that in mind. Ability 2 is what I'm calling Speed Dart or Slow Dart. It will imbue a dart with a special effect. Allies and enemies hit, all within a small radius, receive the buff or the debuff, depending on what mode you're in. If you direct hit somebody, it will give a more potent version of whatever that buff is. So in healing mode, you fire a speed dart. If you hit an ally, they'll go faster, but in a radius, you'll give speed to allies. When you're in damage mode, you apply a slow. So if you hit them, it'll do more of a slow, and if you hit the people around them, it'll do some of it. Basically, this gives her a little bit of extra utility, one that helps her team. Now, this concept was made well before Juno was even released. That's why I wanted to have speed. I'm honestly okay to change that one, and slow can be a little annoying, or maybe it's not going to be as good, so you could change the slow to something else. I don't want to just have like an anti or something, because then that's just kind of like Ana's niche, but it could be something like that. And of course, this one also reloads your weapon. So if I'm in damage mode, I could do shot, 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 that, shot, shot, shot. Although that kind of messed up the rhythm, so it would really be more like shot, 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 that, shot, 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 if that makes sense. I hope it does. I pray that it does. The next thing I have is the ult. That is called Solo Symphony. For the next 2 measures, you're going to fire 4 bolts. You're going to fire 1 per beat, right? So you'll be like, shoot, 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 wherever you want them. And when they land, a clone with the same amount of health of you will spawn. Okay, so basically you're going to be putting a bunch of Maestros all over the field, depending on where you want them. What they're going to do is they're going to mimic your actions other than your movement, shooting and looking where Maestro is, right? So it's going to be hard to kind of demonstrate this. So basically, if I have somebody on that roof over here, and over here, all of them are going to mimic where I'm looking. So if I'm looking at the ground, all of my clones will be looking at the ground. If I shoot there, all of the clones are going to shoot there, right? They're not going to do the full amount of damage, let me be perfectly clear, but like if I use my secondary or my ability, right, I do a slow dart, then you can hit them all with this really big slow, or you know, I can just hit them with regular damage or whatever, or I can heal my team up, right? There's a lot depending on what mode you're in. And you can swap modes freely while you're in this, and the clones won't go anywhere so that you don't, you know, just chuck them off the map or throw them into the middle of everything. Basically what you can do, you can create a big defense, you can create a lot more angles, you can chase down foes. 4 might be a little too much, maybe bring it down to 2. I'm definitely okay with that. But it's some way to kind of incorporate that style of Maestro with her being many places at once, kind of getting her lore in the game in some capacity. I hope you enjoyed those couple minutes because that explanation is about to happen. I'm giving you a warning just because the metronome is a little annoying, so be on the lookout for that. Don't worry, it's only like 30 seconds, it'll go away, I promise. Look at the actual gameplay example. I hope that clears a couple of things up for you. And that's it. Let's go back to watching this quite handsome devil talk about the perks and the rest of the gameplay stuff. Now, to be honest with you, I think the perk design for this character is going to be pretty tough because there's a lot of things that could break or change her gameplay loop that I don't really like. So I'm just going to kind of spitball some ideas, but I'm not really keen on these. I made this concept before perks were even considered. So one of the minor perks I have is one that she moves a little faster after she does one of the flips, so she can either get a little more aggressive or get herself into a better position to escape. The other minor perk I have is also related to flip. Wherever you land at the end of the flip, you are going to put out a radius of healing to yourself and your allies, probably only like 50 over the course of like a second or two. You're basically making a choice between how you want to buff it. It's kind of more for your team survivability, a little bit more burst healing, or do you want to have a little more aggression or movement capability with it? I think it's kind of an interesting choice. I like the ones where you have to choose between how you buff one of the parts of your kit. The first major perk I have is one that I don't know if it's going to work out very well, but I think it's cool. I think it should just increase her tempo on both modes by like 20%. This basically allows her to have higher APM, but it also kind of messes with your muscle memory, so I'm not exactly sure if this is a good idea. The other major perk I had was when you use one of your abilities, either the front flip or the dart, I'm not exactly sure yet, you would get your gun reloaded triple the amount. What does that mean? That basically means that you can go through an entire cycle without having to reload. So instead of doing like shot, reload, shot, it would actually be like shot, reload, shot. You know what I mean? Or of course in DPS it would be like shot, load. You know what I mean? So it doesn't actually mess up your tempo, but you get more value depending on like when you use something. So you would shoot the gun and be like shoot load. You know what I mean? It could be cool. I think that could be really interesting, and it keeps your like DPS and APM value higher. So it's another way to do it, although you kind of like make it bursty. Again, not too sure about those. I forgot to really think about them before I started filming, so that's what I could come up with now. Put some ideas in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. So that's it. We're going back to the script. Thank you. See you in just a second. The main idea behind this character is that you have a really good flow that you have to follow in order to be as effective as possible. It adds a good skill cap and ability rotation, and a unique skill that is something that's not in Overwatch quite yet. At the same time, she still has the ability to react in the moment to save somebody with a diminished effect. Maximizing when you need to have the highest uptime and value possible and when you have to break the cycle can be a very hard skill to manage. Remember, using something off beat will add extra time before you can get back on beat to get the maximum value, which may be the difference between saving an ally or not. She is a stance character, but it's always possible to play aggressive or supportive regardless of your stance. You have to weigh the commitment of swapping modes with the lesser value you can get by being in the opposite mode. On top of that, your abilities do different things depending on the mode, so now you have to figure out if it's worth it not only to swap modes, but use both of your abilities back to back. Also, putting the movement ability as the tie to her stance swap forces her not only to commit, but also potentially lose out on her only escape tool. Playing defensively, prioritizing holding flip for escape might mean she misses out on other opportunities to capitalize on. It's also very easy to end up in the wrong mode for the current circumstance. For her ult, I know I have what are effectively turrets, but I don't think they are place and forget types. Their placement and how the enemies react to them determine who she shoots and what she does. I think there's a lot you can do with this and fits thematically with what I came up with narrative-wise. I can't go into all the little nuances, partially because the kit doesn't actually exist, but I want there to be lots of decisions, opportunity cost, and mechanical skill involved with this character. Maybe I went overboard with the passive, but I think it's really interesting and could be optimized really hard by dedicated players. But let's get into the potential problems because I think there are a lot of them. First off, a rhythm mechanic brings with it a lot of baggage. Having to track the sound effects of battle and the beat of a song is really overwhelming. No character has this much of a demand for intense focus on many things at once, and it might not fit in well with the super fast pace of Overwatch. Switching between these modes may end up being too jarring since they are in different speeds and time signatures. Also, with switching, her primary and secondary fire change depending on the stance. It brings up the question, will the buttons change? If you're like me, you want regular damage and healing to be consistent across all characters. So is there an option that swaps the buttons between modes that keeps damage on M1 and healing on M2? I don't know how practical that might be. You also might have noticed that I didn't talk about cooldowns at all because I'm not sure what to do here. Should the like abilities share a cooldown or should they be on their own separate ones? If the jumps were on separate cooldowns from each other, you could jump into a mode and do something and jump right out of a mode, which isn't really the commitment that I'm looking for here. But if they are on a shared cooldown, should they be relatively fast or should they be slower? Because I do want that commitment in there. I want to hear back from you guys what you think, because this is a really interesting problem for me. Maybe one of them is on a shared cooldown and then one of them isn't. I'm not sure. The last big thing I want to talk about is the ult because it went through a lot of iterations. I designed the kit first and then I went back and I made her backstory, and I wanted to incorporate the being in multiple places at once idea, but that was really hard to make work in theory in the engine and also with her characters. I had some iterations that were close to Phoenix ult in Valorant, a version where she did the last sequence of events at double speed, and one where she made more clones around the longer she was in the ult. What I came up with still goes together with her kit and is much simpler than any of the others. I'm okay with it, but it's not my favorite thing I came up with here. I even considered having her share health with her clones, and if you shot her clone, you could potentially kill her since they are technically the same person, but I did scrap that part. So that's it. That's Maestro. Please let me know in the comments below, what do you think about this character, backstory, or gameplay? I've actually been sitting on this design for a while now because I wanted to have art to go along with it, so I do really appreciate the support because I've been working on this thing for like months now. Hopefully I can think of some more soon and make a couple more of these over the coming year, but we'll have to see. If you want to see those, please consider subscribing and checking out more of my other videos. That's it. I'm going to put my head down. I'm finally finished with this one. I'm going to go work on another one for you guys. Hopefully that doesn't take another 6 months. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.